Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most pivotal moments in Roman history, the Battle of Pharsalus. Their clash would decide the fate of the Roman Republic and set the stage for the rise of an empire. So, how did we get here? It all started with the breakdown of the First Triumvirate, an uneasy alliance between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. After Crassus died in battle, the rivalry between Caesar and Pompey intensified. Caesar had spent years conquering Gaul, amassing incredible wealth, power, and a fiercely loyal army. Back in Rome, the Senate, allied with Pompey, grew fearful of Caesar's ambition. They ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, which would have left him open to prosecution by his political enemies. This was an act of treason and a declaration of civil war. The phrase crossing the Rubicon was born, meaning to pass a point of no return. The Senate and Pompey, completely caught off guard by Caesar's speed, were forced to abandon Rome and flee east to Greece. Their plan was to use the vast resources of the eastern provinces to raise a massive army and then crush Caesar. Caesar, ever the master of momentum, didn't just sit back. This prevented a two-front war and showed his strategic genius. Only then did he turn his attention to Pompey in Greece. The initial phase of the Greek campaign was tough for Caesar. He was outnumbered and his supply lines were stretched thin. In fact, at the Battle of Dyrrhachium, Pompey actually defeated Caesar, handing him a rare setback. Pompey's strategy of starving Caesar out was working. But then Pompey made a critical mistake. Pressured by the overconfident senators in his camp who were eager for a decisive victory, he abandoned his successful Fabian strategy and decided to seek a pitched battle. This brings us to the plains of Pharsalus in central Greece. In August of 48 BC, let's look at the numbers. Pompey had a significant advantage. Pompey's battle plan was straightforward. He would use his overwhelming cavalry superiority on his left flank to smash Caesar's smaller cavalry force, swing around, and attack Caesar's legions from the rear. It was a classic sound military tactic that should have worked. Caesar, anticipating this exact move, devised a brilliant and unconventional counter. As the battle began, the two lines of veteran Roman legions clashed in the center. This was a brutal, grinding fight between some of the best soldiers in the world. Meanwhile, as predicted, Pompey's massive cavalry charge thundered forward on the flank. They easily overwhelmed Caesar's small cavalry contingent, which fell back in a seemingly panicked retreat. This was the moment Pompey's cavalry commander, Titus Labienus, who had once been Caesar's most trusted general in Gaul, was waiting for. His horsemen surged forward, breaking formation to chase down the fleeing enemy, confident that they were about to encircle Caesar's entire army. But it was a trap. Hidden behind his main line of legions, Caesar had secretly positioned a fourth line of infantry, a reserve of about 2,000 of his toughest, most experienced legionaries. He had given them specific and unusual orders: don't throw your javelins or pila. Instead, use them as spears and aim for the faces of the oncoming cavalrymen. As Pompey's overconfident cavalry swept around the flank, they slammed head-on into this unexpected wall of spears. The effect was devastating, both physically and psychologically. The Roman aristocrats who made up much of Pompey's cavalry were not prepared for this kind of brutal face-to-face combat. They panicked. The sight of pila aimed at their eyes was terrifying. The charge broke, and the cavalry fled the field in a complete rout. Caesar's hidden fourth line then wheeled around and smashed into the now exposed flank of Pompey's legions, who were still locked in combat at the center. At the same time, Caesar's own cavalry, having regrouped, returned to the fight and attacked Pompey's infantry from the rear. Seeing his cavalry defeated and his flank collapsing, Pompey lost his nerve. He rode back to his camp, stunned, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. His departure shattered the morale of his army. Attacked from the front, the flank, and the rear, Pompey's legions began to break and flee. Caesar pressed his advantage relentlessly, urging his men to storm Pompey's camp. The aftermath was staggering. Caesar claimed to have lost only about 200 soldiers, a number that is likely an understatement, but still highlights the one-sided nature of the victory. Pompey's losses, however, were catastrophic, around 15,000 killed or wounded and over 24,000 captured. The proud army that Pompey had assembled was utterly destroyed. What happened to Pompey? He disguised himself and fled to Egypt, hoping to find refuge with the young pharaoh, Ptolemy XIII, whose father Pompey had once helped. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria a few days later, he was presented with Pompey's severed head. Far from being pleased, Caesar was reportedly disgusted and saddened by the undignified end of his former ally and soon-in-law. The Battle of Pharsalus was the decisive moment of the civil war. It shattered the power of Pompey and the senatorial faction. Although some resistance would continue for a few more years, the war was effectively won. He was eventually declared dictator for life, paving the way for the end of the Roman Republic and the birth of the Roman Empire under his heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus. He was on the front lines inspiring his men, while Pompey observed from a distance. It was a bold, risky move that completely outsmarted his opponent and turned Pompey's greatest strength into his ultimate downfall.